All right, cool. So today we're doing object relationships. So we're gonna kind of wing a lot of it, and we're gonna make whatever we're gonna make. We're gonna end up making Pokemon winners actually, but I do want to talk about the decisions that we make as we make it. So I don't have like pre-code up that I'm gonna like go based off of. Instead, I want to kind of talk with you guys as we code it and make decisions together on how we're gonna do this. So that'll be fun. Part of that is the insight. I want you guys to see like what I think about when I'm making these decisions and when I'm coding. So, but I do want to start out first. Excuse me. I do want to start out first, just talking about generally what we mean when we say object relationships and what we're doing. So let me go ahead and share my whiteboard and really quick just kind of talk generics and talk big thought processes. All right. So who can tell me just very generically why are we doing object relationships? What's the point?
To mimic real world scenarios.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. We're mimicking real life relationships, and my pen's like acting weird, so you might see some spottiness here, so I apologize. But yes, it's exactly what we're doing. So before we did object relationships, right? If we were making a song, for example, we might make the property at artist like a string, right? Point to like you know the Beatles or something, right? So the string the Beatles. So when we're dealing with object relationships, however, we want more information about the artist than just this string, right? Because string itself is an object, but the only thing that a string holds is characters, right? It just represents text. So we want the at artist to have more information than a word or a phrase. We want at artist to be something that represents an actual person or a group, right? So so in our constructor, right, if we're making a new song, instead of saying song.new and passing in, we can still pass in like the name of the song. So I don't know, like Hey Jude, that's fine. But instead of passing in the string the Beatles, we might want to have um like a variable called Beatles that actually holds an artist object. And what benefit does that give me? Like why passing in that whole object? What can I do now that I couldn't do before? Again, given that we had an artist object, obviously there's going to be. What was that?
You can see like all the information regarding the Beatles, so you could see other songs they've made.
Yeah, exactly right. Right. So the whole point of objects is that I'm taking properties, I'm taking data, and I'm taking actions, and I'm putting all of it inside of one logical unit. And that's again, this is how real life works, right? My car, I can open up the windows of my car. My car can drive. My car can play a CD. I guess not a CD anymore. Play whatever. Hook up to your phone and play, freaking Spotify, right? So your car has all of these methods, the things it can do. Guys, if you have background noise, go ahead and mute yourself. Um, so your car has all these methods they can do, all these actions it can do, and then your car also has properties about it. What type of engine do you have? Like what's the miles per gallon, right? All that kind of stuff. So I want to relate objects because I want to know more about the relationship between two things than just the name of the car, right? Or in this case, the name of the artist. I want to be able to access, like, I think, I'm not sure, so I think it was Jordan, but can't see all you guys. So I want to be able to access, like, the other songs that the artists have, or maybe, whatever other pieces of information I can store inside of an artist. I want to be able to access that. Maybe the artist has actions that an artist can do that I want to be able to do to it, right? So if I have, like, s equals song.new, I can now say s.artist, and now I have a whole object back. And now I can do to s.artist anything I could do to any artist, right? Dot name, I can just get the name. I could have said like dot songs, probably an array of songs maybe. Dot, play concert, maybe whatever I make that artist able to do, I can now call on s.artist, given that s is a song object. Any questions about like why we're doing this? Any questions at all about that?
I got one, Mike. Sorry, I was muted. If you See, the thing that confused me is when you start using the dot notation and you start saying it, you can only say it when you're like in that class. Is that how it works?
Yeah,
Because
yeah. Let's clear up dot notation because this is something very, very important. I want all you guys to feel good about, and I've definitely noticed as a whole, it's something we struggle with. So let's talk about it, right? So song, artist, right? The whole reason that we make individual things, right? Individual objects, is so that we can access, like I said before, we're grouping a bunch of information and actions that it can take together. And the way that we access that is with the dot notation. If I have an individual of any type of objects, let's say pretend we have a song here in our variable s, okay? I can get any method that I want through the dot notation, right? So if my song has an at name, all right, I can't necessarily get the name, but if I have an attribute accessor or I have a manual reader for that name, now I can start using my dot notation, right? So now I can say s.name, right? So using an attribute reader, attribute accessor for all my properties allows me to get those properties through the dot notation. Any method that exists inside of this song, any instance method that exists inside this song, I can say s dot and say that method name. It'll either perform an action or return some sort of information to me. That's the whole reason that I do this, right? And the real life example, again, if we're thinking about cars, I could say if my car was in a variable C, I could say c dot drive, c dot play music, c dot open up back right hand window, right? Exactly. Like all of these things that a car can do, and I can get information from the car. C dot engine type, right? C dot miles per gallon. So the whole point of objects is that I can put methods in those objects and I can access those methods through the dot notation. Some methods are there simply to provide information to me, so give my instance variables back to me. Some methods are there to perform actions. Does that make sense?
as long as those methods are in that class, you can access them. Is that what you're saying?
As long as they're the instance methods too. If I'm working on an instance, they have to be instance methods. But yes, if they're in that class, I can access them.
Okay. Now, the problem I'm having on these tests is when they're asking me to access. They're asking me to link, like, let's say songs with an artist method. I'm struggling with that a lot. How do you link them? That's the thing.
All right, let's talk about it. So, first of all, let's say what is our role in all of this, right? Like I always say, we're the God of the universe, right? When we write class song and we write class artists, we're delegating to demigods to deal with individual songs and individual artists, as well as potentially giving those demigods certain things that they can do themselves, right? The things that the demigods do are given to them in the form of class methods. The things that I want the individual to do are given to the demigod in forms of instance methods. And our demigod's now in charge of making individuals that can do the instance method things. So when I want to relate the two together, right? If I want to call an artist method, so let's say this is where let's say I have a bunch of instance methods here, like in this area of my code. So a bunch of instance methods inside the artist class. Here are a bunch of class methods. And then the same thing over here. I have my song instance methods here. And I have a bunch of song class methods here. All right. So if I'm in a song instance method, I pretend to be an individual song. So if I want to call another song instance method, all I have to do is say self dot and then call the other instance method, because I'm calling that other instance method on whichever individual song the original method was called upon. So remember, self gives me a reference to myself. Me is an individual song. Okay? If I want to call a class method from inside a song instance method, I have a few options. I can say capital S song dot and then call the class method. Or I could say self, referencing my individual instance, dot class, getting the class of myself, which is capital S song, dot whatever the class method is. If I want to call an artist instance method from inside of a song instance method, I have to know which artist I'm talking about. I can't just call an artist instance method, right? Any instance method of an artist I have to call it on some artist, right? So if I'm inside of another artist instance method, the thing I can call it on is self. because self is an individual artist. If I'm not inside of an artist instance method, I have to have some artist to call that instance method on, right? And it's the same, and it makes sense too, because if one of your instance methods is walk, and I try to call walk on somebody that's not an individual human, right? If I scream walk in a room of crowded people, nobody knows who I'm talking to. If you're going to call a method on it that's supposed to be called on an individual, you have to know who that individual is, or else you can't call the method, right? So if I'm in a song instance method and I'm trying to call an artist instance method, I better know what artist I'm talking about. Now, a song has an artist, so I'll probably say something like @artist, and now I can call an instance method because I know which artist I'm talking about. So if I want to get the name of my artist, I can call @artist.name instead of any of my instance methods, right? I could also said self.artist.name because self will be my song, me the song, .artist is my artist. And now I have an individual artist, which I can call methods on. If I want to call artist class methods and I'm anywhere except another artist class method, I have to use capital A artist and then call the name of that method. So the answer to the generic answer to this question is know what type of method you're calling it on, what type of method you have that you want to call, and then what you need to call it on. All song class methods have to be called on capital S song. Now, if you're in another class method in song, that's the same thing as self. But if you're over here, self is the capital A artist, so you have to say capital S song, all right? If you're in some sort of instance method, you need to know the individual on which you would want to call that method. So that's either going to be self if you're in the same class, which means that whoever called whatever method that I belong to, so if s1.play, right, if you want to call some other song instance method, right, self will be s1, right, because you're in the play method, and self is going to be the same object on whichever you call that method upon. So if you're in another song instance method, you can use self. But if you're not inside of a song instance method, you have to somehow get a song individual in order to call another song instance method. Does that make sense? It's just like the rules of real life. It looks complicated because I have all these freaking arrows everywhere now, and this looks like a hot mess. But it's the same laws that govern real life. If you want to tell an individual to do something, you have to know who you're talking to. If you wanted to tell the president, let's pretend like the president is the demigod, right? And try to make it real life. So if you want to say like the president wants to make a federal directive that applies to all Americans, right? You have to talk to the president. You can't talk to Jimmy down the street to get a federal directive, sent out to all people, right? If you like, because like at all, it's kind of like if the government decided to keep, a census, right? To keep track of everybody. You don't tell Jimmy down the street to keep a census. You tell the president or the government to make a census. If you're trying to tell an individual to do something, you don't tell the president to go tell an individual to do something. The president's not going to get on the phone and call you up at 8:30 and tell you to eat your dinner, right? You got to tell that to the individual. It's the same rules that govern real life. You just have to go out of your way to know how to apply those to code. Like, who should this be called on? I got to make sure I'm calling it on that right person. And then the last piece of the puzzle is, what am I currently in a method, right? Am I inside of a def end? Because if I'm inside of a def end, I have a variable, I have a reference to self. And depending on what type of method I'm in, self might be an individual. If I'm in an instance method, self is already an individual of whatever class I'm in. If I'm inside of a class method, self is already a reference to that class. You guys tracking me? The trick is, when you're inside of a def end, pretend like you are whoever that method is made for. If it's a class method, pretend like you're this demigod. Then yourself is the demigod. If you're in an instance method, pretend like you're an individual of that class. You're an instance. Then self is that individual, right? So if you put yourself inside the shoes of who this method is directed for when you're writing inside the method, self will make a lot more sense. When you're outside of classes entirely and you're just writing code, you're back to being the god of the universe, right? And you have to have individual objects to call instance methods, and you have to call class methods on the demigods. Make sense? No?
I'm gonna be honest. I get that. I get like the song when you're inside. You're like, if I'm inside of a class, I get like if I want to call like an artist class and I'm not inside that, I get that I have to say artist to get to the artist class. So my code will go there. But when I'm in like, let's say an instance method,
Mhm.
Like let's say I'm in the I'm working from my song class, right? And I'm
Mhm.
inside a song instance method, and I want to go
Mhm.
to like let's say my artist name.
Okay.
To get to that, it's like, how do I get to that? Do I just say
Well,
artist, or
do,
I don't get it?
does your song have an artist? And I said song D. So song. Does your song have an artist?
Yes.
Okay. So attribute accessor has written a method called artist, and that artist will return at artist, which is an artist object. You following me so far?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So if I want to call an instance method on an artist, usually it's going to be on the artist that I want here, right? My artist, right? That's usually who I care about, right?
Mm-hmm.
The artist that's connected to that song. So if that's the artist I want to call the instance method on, I say self dot artist. Now I have my artist object. Now that I have my individual artist, I can call dot name, get their name.
Oh.
I could
Okay.
also have said at artist, directly get my artist dot name. The thing is, name is an instance method. I call on an artist. Therefore, I need some individual before I call it on them. In this case, I wanted to call it on my artist. Well, I'll go to self.artist, get my artist object, call name on it. Make sense?
So we're
Yeah.
only referencing the artist within song, not the class artist in these situations.
In this particular example, yes, but the class artist does have, I mean, the demigod of artists will have, the means to, it'll probably have an added all array with a bunch of artists in it, for example. In which case, if I wanted to call instance methods on them, I would probably iterate through the added all array, call dot name on all of them, right? The point is I need an individual before I instance method. I need to figure out how am I going to get my individual person, my individual artist before I call dot name on them. And then you say, well, which artist do I want? Well, I want the artist that wrote me as the song. So if an artist wrote me, I probably should have an attribute accessor. I probably should have an at artist and an accessor to that artist so I can get the individual so I can call methods on them.
So if I haven't like this, if I'm set up like this, basically what I have an artist attribute accessor in my song,
Mhm.
and I call myself. I'm in my instance method. And I call self, and I say, okay, I want my artist. It's gonna go look in artist, but in that artist, I want a name. Now that name is gonna come from the name I have in my artist class.
Exactly, right? We're calling dot name on an artist, which means you're asking an artist what their name is, which means that they need to have an at name inside of their class or inside of their object, and they need an attribute accessor or an attribute reader so I can actually call dot name on them. Once I have my object, whatever I call dot on has to be on that object, which makes sense, right? So if I say like hello dot, split, we know that split is a method I can call on a string. I couldn't have called this on an artist class because there is no split method in my artist, right? So whatever instance method I call on an object, it has to relate to that object. So when I say some artist dot name, I'm calling that on the artist. So I'm going to get their name, given that they have the right code to allow me to call dot name on them.
Oh, so if I'm calling it dot name on artist, and when it looks into artist, it's gonna say, okay, I have a name in here, and it's gonna
Yes.
pull it from there.
Yes, from that individual object. So it needs an instance method of name inside of the artist class.
Okay.
Make sense?
Yes.
Okay, cool. So let's get into some code so we can get started. And let me check the chat real quick to make sure there's nothing outstanding. All right, yes, Douglas, there were a lot of arrows. Hopefully some live coding will help out here. So let me share my screen and let's get started with some actual examples here. All right, can you guys all see my screen? All right, let's get out of this to, oh wow. All right, let's bring some code up. All right.
No.
All right, so actually let's do it from scratch so you guys can see what's going on here. So let's first, in my local environment, I need to find a place where I want to code from. So I'm going to say, all right, I'm going to CD into Flatiron. I'll CD into cohort lead, and I'll make a directory called, let's call it OOP relationship examples. So I just made a directory. I'm going to CD into that directory, and I'm going to touch. We're going to do Pokemon and trainers today. So I'm going to touch Pokemon.rb and touch trainer.rb. I'm going to open up VS Code. Again, just trying to get you guys used to navigating your local environment. Hopefully you guys are setting that up. If you haven't yet, I would look into it. It's not it's not like a dire necessity right now, but it's something you should do relatively soon, right? Definitely have to do it before Sinatra. All right, cool. Sweet. So we have our little VS Code open here with our 2 Pokemon and trainer. So let's get started. So let's start basic, right? I want to make a Pokemon and make a trainer. What do I need to do? I want you guys to be really interactive in this one. It's a group project here. So what am I doing?
Define class Pokemon.
Okay. And what is the first question I always ask when I make a new class?
Who's responsible for what certain things?
Okay. Yeah, I like to say, and the question I always ask myself is, what properties should the individuals of this class have? Given that this is supposed to be a class which I instantiate, right, and make individuals from, what are the properties of those individuals that I want to give? And what method is in charge of assigning those?
Initiate.
Close.
Oh.
What's it called?
No. Initialize.
There you go.
Yeah.
So I heard someone say something that I want to address real quick. I heard attribute accessors, right? So a lot, and I kind of blame this on the labs, right? The labs sometimes tell you to make, like, they don't have you make an initialize. You just have attribute accessors for the variables you want, right? Like name, whatever, species, right? And you wouldn't have an initialize, and then this would work because I could say Pokemon dot new, and then I could say, like, or P equals Pokemon dot new, and then like P dot name equals Micah's Pokemon, and then P dot species equals my favorite Arcanine. All right, so this would work fine if I said P dot name before I said it. It would come back as nil. There would be an at name that returned nil to me, and an at name would be set when I did this. I personally think this is very bad practice. I don't like that they have you do this. So we're going to do some Micah's rules. Micah's rules are that if you know what variables you want upon instantiation, you write an initialize method. All right. And you pass in the things that will be different for each individual. Okay. So what's going to be different for every Pokemon?
Name,
The name.
What else?
type,
Owner. Trainer.
Color.
Yeah, trainer. I heard color too. Let's say color is kind of going to be encapsulated in the type here, right? Because all Pokemon of the same type kind of look the same. Oh, actually, that's not true. They're like shiny and stuff, but let's not get too advanced. But I do like it, but I'm not going to put it in. All right, so gender. I heard trainer. We're going to keep trainer out for a second. I like that answer. We're going to get to it, but we're going to discuss that more in depth when we make the trainer and we start relating the two. So name, type, gender. You think that's good? Any other ones you guys want to add? All right. So let's do this. All right. So now you might ask, okay, now once I've like said, okay, this is because really what I'm doing here, and I forgot to ask you guys that, like, do I need to do this? The answer is yes, right? And the reason I want to do this is I want to make it very clear, not only to myself, but everybody reading my code. Like, I fully intend Pokemon to have 3 pieces of data associated with them. Each individual will have their own name, their own type, and their own gender. Okay? This is very important to people reading it. If I just did attribute accessors, I don't have a way to birth a Pokemon with that information. I have to write now like 4 lines of code. I have to write P equals Pokemon.new, P.name equals whatever, P.type equals whatever, P.gender equals whatever, right? It's a lot cleaner to say P equals Pokemon.new and then pass in the information that makes up that Pokemon. I always want you guys to do it that way, okay? And I'm getting some weird highlighting here. I guess that's a new VS Code update. Very interesting. Anyway, so now that I have set these variables, now I can say, okay, what do I want to be able to change here? So let's say, for argument, I want all of these to be readable and writable. So I'll make an accessor for name, type, and gender. Now, here's the thing. If you do, so your like a counterpoint might be like, well, what if you don't know what the name, the type, and the gender is right away? You just want to make some Pokemon objects and send them later. Sure. So whatever you don't know right away, so let's say you just see the type. Type makes sense to see first. So I'm going to put type first. The things that I know I have to pass in upon instantiation, I'm going to put first. And then the ones I might not know, default values of nil. I could have also done like self dot create by name, right? Something like that. And it just take, or create by type, I guess. It just takes the type. And then I could have explicitly put in nil for these two. But I like to put default values in there because it makes these arguments optional. Does everybody get how this works? Does anybody have a question of what's going on here on line 11? No? Okay, right. So this means that when I say Pokemon.new, I can either put in just a type, I can put in a type and a name, or I can put in all three. Any of those combinations will work because if I do not put in these, they're just going to get the value nil. Now, what I cannot do is put in a type and a gender and not put in a name. Okay, now there's a way you can make it so you can do that, but we're not going to cover that right now. We can do it later. And I just want to make sure we get to all the important stuff right now instead of going down rabbit holes. Okay, let me delete this. Everybody tracking me so far? We have an initialize method. We can put in a type, a name, and a gender. Set those equal to instance variables, and we can read and write all of that.
Does
This
your
is like, go ahead.
does your, because you switched the name and because you switch types and you know, you switch the name and then the type, do you have to also switch it on the bottom where it says name, type, gender?
Nope, because these variables remain constant. Doesn't matter. Name will still have the name in it, which will be set to name. Type will still have the type in it, which will be set to type.
Okay.
The order there doesn't matter. The only order that matters is when I pass it in to .new, that the type is first, then the name, then the gender.
Okay.
Okay. Now, if you guys are looking at this and it's not yet like second nature, like, yes, this is how I set a class, I want you to start practicing over the weekends, just making your own objects and making your own classes and setting them up, because it's got to become second nature to just say, okay, I want to represent this thing. So I'm going to make a class of thing. I'm going to figure out what individuals should have in terms of properties, and I should set up whether I want them to be accessible or not. Like, what methods do I need to access these? Do I want to be able to access all three, right? All those questions, that should be boilerplate. I can set up objects. I can set up properties of those objects, and I can make them accessible. Boom, right? Because this isn't the hard part about like making stuff work, right? This is the boilerplate. This is the bare minimum needed to make a class that does anything at all. So this has got to become second nature. And I'm not saying it should be at this moment, but I'm saying is if you identify right now that this is not second nature, that's something that you need to start practicing before the project, because the project's going to go a lot simpler if you're like, oh, I'm making an object or I'm making a class. Let me just go ahead and set up what I need real quick, instead of, you know, spending time getting stuff like this wrong. This is, again, this is boilerplate. This has got to be, boom, I know how to do this.
On the attribute accessor, based on that this is supposed to be like real life, and I'm going to put this out there. Yes, I'm not a Pokemon fan. I never really got into it, but would we change their name? Like, would we give people access to change their name? Would we put that under a reader only?
I would say I would agree with type and gender. I don't think you can change those two. So I would say, because I think you can nickname whatever you want and change the name. If you find a little guy that's like, do you want to change your little dude's nickname? So
Okay.
I think not that I play or anything, but like, but yeah. So I think the name would be good for an accessor. I agree with you though, that not all three. I think that type and the gender would probably be readers. You know what? Unless we're talking about evolution, so maybe type would go here, but the gender, I'm pretty sure. I don't think you can change male to female and female to male. So I think that it would look like this.
Okay. Yeah. That makes
But
sense.
that's a great question, and that's a question you should always ask yourself. Don't just default to accessors, because there might be something that you want to keep. You know, it's called encapsulation, right? It's one of the pillars of OOP, keeping your data safe. If it doesn't need to be exposed, don't expose it, right? Cool. Awesome. All right. What else here? What do we want to do if we want trainers to be relating to Pokemon? What have we kind of been doing? What information have we been telling our demigods to hold on to so it knows about all of the individuals that exist? How have we been doing that so far?
So we get a class, what do you call it, variable as an empty array. So add at all empty array. Create a class method. So define self dot all. Put in the add at all within the self dot all, so we can call it at some point. And then every time we create a new Pokemon, it should be within the initialize as well. So add at all, shovel, what do you call it, self.
Perfect.
into
Exactly
it. So
right.
when we have a trainer, we can call upon whatever one that we actually want to play around with, depending on the attribute that we've assigned it.
Exactly right. Okay, that was perfect. And I want to unpack all this, make sure everybody's tracking what's going on here. First of all, organizational stuff. Me personally, I like to put all my class stuff up top, all my instance stuff down bottom. I let my attribute accessor and reader kind of be the divide between my class stuff and my instance stuff. My initialize is always going to be my first instance method, and then I put all my other instance methods down below. It's just a nice organizational tool, in my opinion.
Hey, Mike, I got a quick question about that.
Yep. What's up?
Because I noticed that in one of the labs, you see how you have attribute accessor and attribute reader?
Mhm.
So they had one up top, and then later on, they had it, they had attribute reader down. Sorry, my voice is a little hoarse from the warehouse.
Oh, you're fine.
They had attribute reader like later on. Is that going to affect how the code runs if they're not all up top?
Nope, not at all. The only reason that it would is if for some reason if I made a duplicate method that's getting written by attribute accessor called like def name, which I would never want to do because attribute accessor name writes a method called name for me. So right now I'm writing a method which is already named. Now because this came after my attribute accessor, it's going to override whatever attribute accessor wrote for me. If I were to put this above it, now attribute accessor would have the last word. Okay, but as long as you're not doing anything you're not supposed to be doing, like making two methods called the same thing, then it doesn't matter where they are. You're good to go. Okay?
Okay.
Very cool. I just think that it's nice for readability, right? If I look at this, all my demigod stuff is up top, all my individual stuff is down at the bottom. And then it's broken up by the readers and writers that I have. So all the methods I can use to get information about my Pokemon. Cool? Now let's unpack what's going on with this add it all thing. First of all, why do I have a method called self.all? What's the purpose of that?
To access, so you can basically access that array.
Exactly. It's a reader, except on my class level. And I don't have a attribute reader version for class stuff. That only makes it for my instances, so I have to manually write my reader out here.
Found that out the hard way.
Yep. Nice. And then add it all. Is there a reason I'm defining this out in the middle of nowhere? Why don't I have that inside of some sort of method?
Because it's a class variable.
Exactly. So just like I want to start making my instance variables, I always want to define them initially inside of my initialize method. That's the proper place for instance variables. My class variables should be defined out in the middle of nowhere in the class, and I like to put them all at top so it's very clear where they are. Okay, cool. And last but not least, line 16, what is this self thing that I'm shoveling into my add it all array? What type of data is self?
That should be an instance.
Okay, an instance of what?
An instance of,
Self Pokemon.
yeah.
Of Pokemon, exactly. So whatever Pokemon I'm currently birthing with this type, name, and gender gets put into my add it all array. All right. Any questions about this so far?
Yeah,
I
I
have
have
one.
a question.
Go.
Go. Okay. So if we want to make a Pokemon object with empty everything, type, name, gender, we have to put in type also name.
Say that one more time. If I want to make a Pokemon with everything, I can just put all three in. So,
Yeah, we
whatever-
want to empty from attribute, nothing inside.
You don't want anything? You can't do that because type,
Like we can do. Oh yeah, we have to put in type nil. I mean,
yeah, if I didn't want anything, I would have to pass in nil for type, pretty much.
like later we will assign on it.
Sure, but if I don't know anything about a Pokemon, in my opinion, there's no point to make it, right? Like, why would I be making an object which I know nothing about? I see like a silhouette of a Pokemon scurrying into the trees, right? That's the only time I could think that, like, you know. So
Yeah, I mean,
even then, maybe like general shape would at least be able to be known, right? So if I don't know anything about it, there's no reason for me to make an object, right?
Yeah, I mean, later we can assign on it. Like
Yeah.
we have a
could.
attribute
Yeah.
writer, we assign on it.
Yes, you can. You can. So this is, again, like I said, it will work without an initialize method, but it's
Yeah.
going to be my little rule that you have to do it. Now, there are times when you don't need an initialize method. If you don't have any instance variables that you want to keep track of, that's fine. Or if you have
Okay.
methods that can work before you know your instance variables, then that's also fine, right?
Okay.
And you know that you'll never know it upon initialization. I'm just saying that the times where that is a realistic situation is very few and far between. Most of the times I've seen the labs do it, I most certainly would have, if I was designing it, I most certainly would have had my initialized take argument. So I would say 99% of the time you want to do it like this. And if you don't want to, shoot me a Slack, see if it's a good idea. Like whenever you have questions like that, is this best practice? Is this not best practice? Shoot me a Slack about it and I'll let you know. Okay.
Micah, on the instance variables, I know I have a lot of questions, so I'm sorry.
It's okay.
But on the instance variables, let's say when I'm creating other instance methods and I get a new variable, should I go up into the instance initializer and put that variable in there as well?
It depends. Is it something that should be known at birth, right? So that usually yes. What we're gonna see today when we make a Pokemon relate to a trainer, like Pokemon are we're gonna pretend like they're born in the wild, so they're not gonna get a trainer at birth. So we're gonna have an @trainer here, and we can actually go ahead and set it, and it's gonna be nil right away. I don't need to have it passed in because I know it's not gonna. I'm never gonna birth a Pokemon. I'm not breeding Pokemon here, right? We're not breeding them. We're gonna assume all Pokemon are born in the wild, and then we'll catch them in the tall grass, right? Just like in the game. So, so in this case, I'm like, oh, I have a new @trainer right here. I know I don't want it, right? And this is a design thing. So whenever you think of a new property that your individual should have, say, do you want them to know it at birth? If so, add it to your arguments, add it to this, setting your instance variables here. If it's something you know that it won't be known at birth, I like to make a little placeholder here and set it to nil. Now, this does nothing functionally because if I didn't do this, @trainer would still be nil. But I do it because it shows me and it shows my code that I fully expect there to be an @trainer and that I'm intentionally keeping it nil upon birth, right? It's a readability thing. I personally like doing it. You don't have to, but I recommend it. And we're going to set that now as our attribute accessor for a trainer. Okay.
Cool. I have a quick question.
What's up?
Can we use save instead of self.all?
Could you use what now? Save?
Mm-hmm.
So the purpose of the method save, right? And so let's talk about this real quick, and hopefully we get to the relationships here. But these are all really, really important things. So I'm glad that we're doing this too, because familiarity and comfortability with making objects is extremely important. So when I say save, the whole purpose is in this context. Now this is not something that's like real. I guess I don't want to say that. So there might be sometimes in real life where you do something like this. In general, like this is going to be, we're going to actually have a database which keeps our information for us so that we don't lose our information when we rerun our program. But the point of our save, like the action of saving, right? The point of it is that we want to be able to put an individual inside of this @all array, right? That's what save means. It means take the individual and put it in my demigods all array so it's keeping track of it, right?
Okay.
Right, so that's what this is doing, right? I'm the abstract like definition of what I'm doing here is I'm saving this thing. Now the labs had you do a method called save, which I actually really like, and it did exactly this, right? This is the act of saving. It's taking myself and I'm putting myself in the @all array. That means that any object I make, so P1 equals Pokemon.new, and let's pretend I put all my stuff in there that I need to put in there. I can say any individual Pokemon.save, it will take itself and it'll put it in the @all array, right? In the Pokédex, right? So the Pokemon demigod will now be tracking him if I save it. Okay? This is not the only way to solve this problem, right? And of course, if I said save here, now I can just say save here, and I don't have to write the shovel here because it calls a method which does the shoveling for me, right? This is not the only way to solve the problem, right? Like, and this is what I mean when I say, like, you're the god, you get to choose what you want to do. I personally think it's the best way to solve it, but you could have just as easily said def self.save, made a class method that takes in a Pokemon instance, right? And shovels into the @all array that Pokemon instance, right? And now instead of saying P1.save, I would have said Pokemon.save P1, right? And this is what I'm saying when I say, like, you guys get to choose how all this works. Like, this is a perfectly fine design choice. You say you want the method to be called on the Pokemon object. You want to pass in the individual. That individual gets shoveled into the @all array. There's no one right way to do it. This works just fine. I personally think it's more elegant to have the individuals able to save themselves. I think P1.save looks better than Pokemon.save and passing in P1. but they're both valid solutions to the problem, where the generic problem is, how do I keep track of individual Pokemon? You guys tracking me?
But if you want to keep track of something, wouldn't you want to keep track of something when it's born?
Exactly. That's why I'm saying, okay, so now we're getting into the .new versus .create. So this is not something that's built into Ruby. This is convention with something called active record, which we're going to get into later. But in general, what we're going to see down the road is when we say .new, we're implying that we're not saving the thing that we just made. And if we create something with the .create, I'm implying that I am saving what I just made. The difference we'll see conventionally between new and create, and again, create's not built into Ruby. It's a convention that we're going to see down the road. The difference between these two words are going to be, do I save this thing, and that's create, or do I not save this thing, and that's new? So if I tell my Pokemon demigod, I want to be able to call .create, right? First of all, I need to take the same stuff that my initialize took, because I want it to be the same thing as my .new. The only difference between this and .new is I am saving it. I'm shoveling it into the all array. So you're right, Dominic. And if I want to save it upon birth, I use the conventionally I will use the create thing. Now, could you make the design choice that you always want things to be saved on birth, thus rendering create obsolete, and just put save here? Yeah, that's completely fine. When you say .new, it will save in the add.all array. That's your choice as the god of the universe, because you're the programmer, and that's what you want to happen. What I'm telling you is that when we use active record, somebody else was the god of the universe, and they decided that when I say .new, things are not going to be saved in my database, but if I say .create, they will be. If I say .new, I have to explicitly call save later. If I say .create, it's going to save it for me. So if you want to get used to those conventions now, you can write this create method, which just makes a new one and also saves it. But if you decide, hey, I want to save it no matter what, go ahead and toss that save method in your initialize. Again, it's up to you. It's how you want your ecosystem to work. You're in charge.
For the labs, most of the labs like ask us to save it upon initialize, right? So that's for the labs, we still have to just follow that.
Yeah, in the labs, they kind of do that in the beginning, and then they start to transition over to this whole create paradigm.
Okay.
I think they kind of go back and forth, which can get confusing, especially if you don't understand why they're going back and forth. So the important thing to remember is you're in charge. However, there is a paradigm out there that distinguishes new versus create against like not saving and saving. So that's what the labs are trying to get you used to later on. But again, the point is, if I can, like, even if we don't get to object relations today, if you guys come away from this lecture with one thing, it's have confidence in your ability to make decisions when you code. It's your job to think about how you want your code to work and to make it work that way. There is no, like, again, labs get you in this mindset of being like, how do I pass this test? How do I, what am I supposed to do? There is no supposed to do. It's how do you make something work the way that you want it to work? Now, when you're in a lab and you want it to work differently than the way the test wanted it to work, obviously you have to, succumb to their desires. However, when you're making your own project, it's going to be vastly a different process if you have that mindset of I'm in charge, we're doing things my way, than if you think, what am I supposed to do? Because if you think, what am I supposed to do, and you don't have any instructions, right? You don't have a test suite when you make your project. So if you have this passive mindset of like, what I need to like regurgitate information on this thing, that's not what you're supposed to do, right? Look at the best practices that you've learned from the labs, but then use it to create things how you want it to work, all right? And I'll go over some best practices too before next week before we get to the project. Any questions about the code that we have here right now?
I do.
So,
how do you differentiate the relationship between belong to and has many?
So the has many and belongs to keyword is that again is also convention that relates to active record. In general, the idea is, if, for example, here, a trainer is going to have a team of 6 Pokemon. So a trainer has many Pokemon. A Pokemon has a single trainer. So a Pokemon belongs to a trainer. So that's just that generic concept of, do I have, is my relationship with this thing a many or a 2-1 relationship, right? As a Pokemon trainer, I have 6 Pokemon on my team. I have many Pokemon. As a Pokemon on my team, I belong to a single trainer. Make sense?
Right, but I'm talking about coding wise. Like, how would you, how can you identify it through your code? Like when you're coding to say this is this type of coding or this style style of coding is actually belongs to, and that other style is, you know, has many. Because
Well, we're about
I've been trying to identify it for the past few weeks now. I still
right.
can't get
Yeah,
it.
I got you, and that's exactly what we're about to do right now. We're going to make a belongs to relationship between our Pokemon and trainer, and a has many relationship between our trainer and Pokemon.
Okay.
We can see the beginnings of it already. At trainer is going to be equal to nil, and eventually at trainer is going to be a single trainer object. That's indicative of a belongs to. If it was a has many, we would expect to see an array here, ready to hold many trainers. Because my Pokemon don't have
Oh.
many trainers, we can see that they probably belong to a single trainer, because this will eventually have one object in it. Make sense?
Oh, okay.
Cool.
I see. All right.
Awesome. So let's go ahead and make our trainer and set him up to have multiple Pokemon. So somebody guide me through this. What am I doing?
Well, first you have to create a trainer class.
Okay. And what's the first question you ask yourself?
Well, do you need an attribute for? Yes, you do.
Okay.
To initialize.
Okay. So what individual property should my trainer get upon birth?
Name.
Okay.
Did you have gender for them too?
Yeah, we can do gender. That's fine.
Okay.
Pokemon wouldn't go there, right?
I'm
Yeah.
not a Pokemon fan, so I don't know.
What about experience?
Experience? Okay.
I don't know if that's a thing, but I don't know.
Power.
I don't think it is, but it's fine.
Power. I don't know.
Power. Let's group that in with experience. Let that be like their little metric there for how good they are.
Okay.
Age too.
Age, yeah. Let's go ahead and turn this to age. All right. So I have name, age, and experience. I think that's good. So I heard Pokemon, and I like the idea. And that this is where the design choice to me comes in. I'm deciding as the programmer that I want trainers to be instantiated with an empty Pokemon array and Pokemons to be instantiated with no trainer. It's on the trainer to go find Pokemon and Pokemon to go find a trainer. So they're both going to be born devoid of one another, and we're going to make those relationships after the world starts. Okay? So the world will not be born with trainers with Pokemons and Pokemons with trainers. No trainers will be born with Pokemon. No Pokemon will be born belonging to a trainer. Okay? That's going to be my design choice. You definitely could have said put Pokemon in here at Pokemon equals Pokemon. You know, put trainer in here at trainer equals trainer. Definitely a valid choice. I'm choosing to go another route because I like the design better, and I also like to show you guys that my Pokemon, if I know what it's going to be, in this case, I'm deciding it will always be an empty array. It means I don't need it here, and I can just explicitly set it right there. All right. And what do I want to do with these three pieces of data here?
You want to set them as attributes?
Yep. Instance variables.
Instance variables, yeah. Is that the right terminology, attributes?
I would say, yeah, I think that's a valid name for them. If you call them, honestly, I care more, like, okay, so terminology is important, but I care more about understanding. So if you know that these are properties, instance variables, attributes, all of these things that mean it's data that's stored inside of an individual, that's fine with me. Okay. And now what do I want to do?
You want to have
no, go ahead.
like probably a reader for name and age, because those would be set.
Okay.
And then an accessor for experience, because you could probably change that over the course of whatever.
I like it. All right, very cool. All right, so let's go ahead and make a third file real quick. So I'm going to say touch world.rb. All right, world's going to require both of these. So require relative / Pokemon, and require relative / trainer. Background noise, go ahead and mute yourself. All right, so we want to say, let's go ahead and start making some things. So I'll say like, for a Pokemon, I need a type. So let's just do a type for just a Pokemon and then make a trainer, and we'll do me because I'm narcissistic. So Micah equals trainer.new, and I'm going to do Micah and 29 and expert, obviously. And we'll say P1 equals Pokemon.new, and I'll say Arcanine, again, my favorite. All right, cool. So let's see what this looks like. I'm going to put a require pry up here, and I'm going to say binding.pry down here. so we can mess around with what we just did. And we might get some errors, at which time it will be your job to figure out what went wrong. So as always, guys, we might slide into the first 5 to 10 minutes of the next pod. If so, we'll make sure to give that time back. I just want to be clear about that. All right, so no errors. Looks like we did that perfectly. Good job, team. So if I look at my Micah, right? Micah is a trainer with the appropriate stuff. I can say Micah.age, get that data. I can say Micah.experience, get back expert, and say Micah.name. And Micah, oh, can't even spell my own name, Pokemon. All right. Oh, what happened there?
You need to define Pokemon inside of your trainer class.
All right, and where should I do that?
Add or accessor.
Okay, I like it. Very cool. So if I were to reload this, I could say Micah. Oh, Q, Micah. So just a little. Actually, that's a good lesson for you guys. If you ever get that little that thing, see the colon here, and you can't type, right? You do colon Q. Colon Q gets that lets you able to type again. Okay. All right. So I can now say Micah.Pokemon, and I get that empty array. All right. So my Pokemon look good. So no name because we didn't give it one, but we gave it a type. There it is. Okay. So our Pokemon looks good. Our trainer looks good. Now we need to start relating the two. I want to make it so I can catch a Pokemon. So how do we want to do that? Now, there's a bunch of ways to do this. So we're going to work together on something that makes sense, and we're going to make it happen. I want to be able to catch, as a trainer, I want to be able to catch a Pokemon. What do I do?
Create a method in Pokemon.
Okay. So it's going to be, and okay, so there's no right answer here, but let's be very clear. When we say in Pokemon, this is going to be an action of an individual Pokemon to be caught. It's just a difference in philosophy. Do we want to give an action of a Pokemon to get caught or an action of a trainer to catch, right? It doesn't matter. They'll both work. It's fine. Either way. I just want to be very clear that both of those are options.
Train to catch?
What do you guys think? I'll go with whatever the group thinks.
Trainer to catch.
Trainer to catch.
Oh my God. Eric, you have been overridden. I'm so sorry. Again, though, I want to make it very clear that would have worked just fine. And that's kind of reinforces this whole thing I've been saying. There's more than one way to solve a problem. Eric probably would have put it in Pokemon. Some of you guys would have put it in Trainer. At the end of the day, both programs would work, and they both be good practices. So sometimes a decision isn't better than another decision, but it's all about having that confidence. Like, how do I want this to work? I'm the programmer. I get to choose. I'm going to do things my way. So, like, if Eric was writing this, he'd be like, all right, screw you guys. We're doing it in Pokemon, and it would work just fine, right? Doesn't matter. It would have been just as good of a project, just as good of an ecosystem. It's all on you guys to decide how you want to make your own universe, okay? So we'll do this, and we'll make this a method. And what do we want to call this method?
Catch Pokemon.
Yeah,
Okay.
catch Pokemon.
Okay. Do I need any information in order to catch a Pokemon?
No.
No? Okay.
You need the Pokemon that you're catching, right?
There you go. I completely agree. You need to know who you're catching. That needs to come in as an argument. Otherwise, I have no clue what to do, right? If I just say catch Pokemon, like what do I want to do in catch Pokemon? First in English, then in code. In English, what's catch Pokemon supposed to do?
See if there's Pokemon available to catch and catch it.
Well, it has to be an individual Pokemon. So let's keep the scope of this method. I like your idea of seeing what's available. We might make another method that's like survey or like walk in tall grass that lets us like encounter a random one or see the ones that are available. We can definitely do that. For now, let's keep this. I like to think of it's the single responsibility principle. We try to keep methods as single purpose as possible. So this one is going to be solely for catching a Pokemon. So I know who I want to catch and I'm going to catch it, right? So
it should do something like pushing into some kind of array.
Okay, and what array is that?
We have to bring all
Pokemon
instances.
All right, one at a time. What do we got? Craig, you were talking at first. So what do you think?
Like make an array that's like caught Pokemon or caught Pokemon, something like that.
Let's look at line 11.
So like a double, so like a double at thing where it's like a brand new
Now that's an
Oh,
interesting.
you have it right. My bad.
Yeah,
Okay,
no,
you
you're
have
good.
one
You're
already.
good.
Okay.
But let's talk about what you just said. A double at sign would be a class variable, right? So the
Right.
trainer god isn't trying to catch Pokemon. It's the trainer individuals, right? Ash and Red and whoever, whatever their freaking names are. I don't know. But they're the
Gary.
ones. They're a bunch of Gary. There you go. Thank you. So like you have all these individual trainers going to catch Pokemon. It's not the trainer god that's catching Pokemon. And that's what clues us in.
Okay.
Hey, we want it to be an instance variable. Each trainer is going to have their
Right.
own team, right? Very cool. So I like what you said, though. We want to take that Pokemon and we want to shovel it into our Pokemon array. So let's do it.
Yeah.
Pokemon. Very cool. Right? I like it. Do you guys see what we're doing here? Right? So we said we want to catch a Pokemon. So we got to know who we want to catch. And once we know it, we're adding it to our array. All right. So this is great. But does this Pokemon know it's been caught?
No.
Okay. So how do we need to let it know it's been caught?
Well, you have to create another method.
If I created another method, I would have to call 2 methods to catch a Pokemon. I want this catch Pokemon to do all the work necessary to catch a Pokemon.
I
So
think there is other way.
What was that?
There's other way we can do Pokemon.all. We bring all instance of Pokemons inside this.
Why would, if I'm catching a single Pokemon, why do I care about other Pokemon though?
Like you do each and you catch one.
But you just want to catch all the Pokemon?
No, you bring all of them and which one you want.
I think you're talking about like some sort of cheat codes where we should be ready for the game here. No. We
What if
so-
we
trainer method?
yeah,
But
we
like
re-
I see
we relate
what
to
you're
the-
saying. You're trying to figure out which Pokemon to catch. So right now, again, like I
Yeah.
said, single responsibility principle. This
Okay.
method is in charge of, given that we know who we want to catch, it's in charge of catching that Pokemon. We'll deal with how we come across the Pokemon later. Okay. Again, guys,
Okay.
let me go ahead and set a hard cutoff at we're gonna call it 4:15 my time, so 7:15. All right. So next pod group, be prepared to be up to 15 minutes late. I do apologize, but I think it's important to get this out since it's being recorded and everything. So, and again, we might just push it back. Well, if we need that extra time, we will give it to you. So, don't worry about that. Okay. So,
you would need to set the Pokemon to the new trainer.
all right, tell me what to type.
Pokemon.trainer equals self.
Exactly. That's exactly right. A Pokemon object is coming in here. What can I call on a Pokemon object? All of these things and all of these methods. So my Pokemon has a trainer. I've already said that I'm expecting this to be a trainer object. So if I'm in a trainer instance method where I'm catching a Pokemon, not only does my trainer need to know which Pokemon I just caught, but that Pokemon's trainer needs to be set to the person doing the catching. You guys tracking this?
So something like Pokemon. If you have to equal the @trainer from the Pokemon to something that corresponds in here.
We already did it. That's what this does, right?
Oh, you did. That's
Pokemon.trainer
what it
equals
is.
self,
Okay.
right? So what that does is it calls the trainer writer, right? And it sets @trainer to self. And because I'm in the class of trainer and I'm in an instance method, self is the individual trainer who caught this Pokemon. So let's see this in code real quick, right? So let me go ahead and run my world file here, all right? So I have Micah and Arcanine, and I'm trying to catch Arcanine, right? So let's see what happens first if I don't have this line, and then we'll see what happens when I do have it, okay? So I'm in my world. I want to catch Arcanine, so I say Micah.catch Pokemon, and I pass in P1, which is Arcanine. All right, that worked fine. If I look at Micah.Pokemon, and I'll go ahead and map it to their type so we can see them very easily. All right, so there's Arcanine. He's in my Pokemon array. However, if I say P1.trainer, oh, I guess I didn't. I ran it before I took it out. All right, so what should have happened let's exit out and see what happens if I don't do that. So that worked because I had not commented this out yet, but let's try that one more time. Yeah. Okay. All right, so if I don't have this line here, even though Micah's Pokemon array has Arcanine in it, Arcanine's trainer is still nil, right? So when we're dealing with object relationships, it's really important to hit both sides of those relationships, right? And back to the thought of has many versus belongs to, right? I need to fulfill both of those. A trainer has many Pokemon. So when a trainer catches a Pokemon, I put that Pokemon in my Pokemon array. My Pokemon belongs to a trainer, so I have to set that Pokemon's trainer to me when I catch it. This signifies the completion of both sides of my belongs to has many relationship. I have many Pokemon, I add my Pokemon, my Pokemon belongs to me now, Pokemon.trainer itself. Okay? Does that make sense?
A quick question.
What's up?
What if that game we try to build has a trainer and an owner? Let's say I'm playing the game, so I own the Pokemon that the trainer catch and the trainer. How would I set that relationship pretty much?
All right. Yeah, if you wanted to do that, you definitely could. I would just say at owner equals nil. In my Pokemon, I would make an owner object that has many Pokemon and has many trainers. So I'd have two arrays in there. I'd have a trainer array and a Pokemon array in my owner class. And then when I catch a Pokemon, right, I would need to know who the owner was as well. And I would say at Pokemon, shovel in Pokemon, owner.Pokemon, shovel in Pokemon, Pokemon trainer equals self, and Pokemon.owner equals owner.
Yeah,
So
I
I
have a
would
question.
shovel Pokemon inside owner as well, or just shovel.
Yep.
Okay.
If our owner also had Pokemon, I'm not going to draw it all out because I want to do more in this example, but
Right.
it would just be like owner.Pokemon, Pokemon, right, and then Pokemon.owner is owner.
That'd probably be a good example if we tried to trade the Pokemon, right?
Yeah, that's a great example. Let's trade it between two trainers. Perfect. That's a very, very good idea. Didn't see who said that, but thank you. All right, cool. So let's make a method called trade. Now, should the method trade be something that a Pokemon does or something that a trainer does?
Let a trainer.
Trainer.
Yeah, I agree. So this time it kind of does matter. The other one was a little bit ambiguous. This one's like probably should be in the trainer. So what do you want to do if you want to trade Pokemon? What do you need to know?
Another trainer.
Pokemon you're trading.
And the Pokemon you're trading.
Okay.
Yeah.
So Pokemon to trade and trainer to trade. I'll say T to trade. We'll be very explicit with our variable names. Is that it? Are they going to give us a Pokemon?
You need to know
Receiving Pokemon.
Yeah. Okay, so let's call this P to give and P to get. Now, if I know the Pokemon I'm going to get and the one I'm going to give, I probably don't need this one because I can get the trainer by saying P to get dot trainer. But it's okay. We can definitely do it this way. So let's just do it this way. It really, again, it doesn't matter. There's no right answer. You're in charge of how you want it to work because getting the trainer now gives you more controls. You could like also make sure that like the T to trade with, the trainer that you're going to trade with, dot Pokemon actually include P to get. So he's not trying to get you something he doesn't already own, right? So passing in this one too could let you put more controls over it to make sure he actually owns the Pokemon, right? We're not going to do that today, but it's just something to think about, right? There's a lot of stuff to think about when you're making these decisions. So how would I perform a successful trade? Let's write it out. Let's write it out in English first, and then we'll write the code. What are the steps?
Well, first you have to, I guess, when you're trading in the real world, you say, okay, I have this and I'll trade you that. So you have to know what you have to trade.
Okay. So I have Pokemon to give, Pokemon to get, and the person I'm trading with.
So
Now,
I have to have them change hands, basically.
Okay. So the Pokemon to give needs to come out of my at Pokemon array and go into the other trainer's Pokemon array, right? Then what?
The Pokemon to get has to come into your array.
Exactly. P to get needs to come in my array and leave the trainer's Pokemon array. All right, cool. So this is kind of 4 steps, right? So I need to take the Pokemon I'm going to give out of my array and give it to my trainer's array. And then I need to get the one I'm going to get and put it in my array and give it to and take it out of the other trainer's array. But I'm missing 2 things, right? I'm dealing with my Pokemon arrays. What am I forgetting?
Are you forgetting to shovel in when it actually happens? Is that what we're...
Nope, because we're dealing with the arrays. Like taking it out of my array, putting it in their array, that's going to indicate the shoveling of arrays. What side of the relationship am I not doing yet?
Pokemon.
Yeah, exactly. The Pokemon's trainers, right? So P to give trainer needs to be set to the new trainer. And P to get trainer needs to be set to me, right? Very cool. So I'm going to go ahead and say, let's do it. So the first thing, right, I'm going to use my game plan. P to give comes out of my Pokemon array. All right, perfect. So I'm going to say at Pokemon equals at Pokemon dot select. I'm going to select all of my Pokemon which are not P to give. If all my Pokemon which are not the one I'm trading, we're good to go. Stay in my array. Otherwise, get out. Now I'm going to say I'm going to put the Pokemon I want to give into the other trainer's Pokemon array. So T to trade with that Pokemon. Shovel in. P to give. All right? Very cool. So I've dealt with my Pokemon array. Now I'm going to deal with their Pokemon array. My P to get needs to come out of their array. So the trainer to trade with dot Pokemon has to equal their old Pokemon array, selecting only the Pokemon which is not the one they're going to give to me. And now my Pokemon array needs to get P to get. Okay? And lastly, I need to do the same stuff to my Pokemon. So my Pokemon to give needs to be set to a new trainer. So who can tell me how to do this? The last few minutes here.
At P to, not at, I'm sorry, P to give dot trainer is equal to Micah or the who
You trade with?
So
yeah, T to trade with, right? Because I'm
Right.
giving. So if it couldn't be self because it already is self. Because I'm talking in the perspective of me. So if I'm giving it, it's already mine. See? Perfect. All right, cool. So P to give is that, and now what's the last thing?
Either get
Yep.
that Pokemon.
No, P to get is a Pokemon. Can I call that Pokemon on a Pokemon?
Oh no, that trainer
Okay.
equals
self.
Exactly. Self, me. Because I'm making these variables in the perspective of me, right? I'm in an instance method. I'm pretending I am the person who's trading. So I'm going to give this one to the guy I'm trading with. And the one I'm going to get, their trainer should be set to me, right? So if we name our variables, that mindset's very important. When you're in an instance method, pretend you are the individual who's performing that method. I'm pretending I'm going from being the god of my universe to pretending like I'm a trainer who's trading Pokemon. I have a Pokemon I want to give, a trainer I'm trading with, and a Pokemon to get. The Pokemon I'm giving, I need to set the trainer to the guy I'm trading with, right? This is just like if you were, think about like how you would actually do a trade in real life, right? So it's all about just like slowing down, thinking about how this works in real life and making it work in code. Because I guarantee you guys could all, on a piece of paper, write a list of Pokemon and perform a trade on paper between 2 trainers, right? You just need to learn how to do that in code, right? And it's just about thinking step by step. Write down your pseudocode and then use that as a guide. Name your variables, something that's very explicit so you know which variable is what. You don't get lost, right? I put myself in the shoes of the trainer who is trading a Pokemon. I made my variables very explicit to what relationship they have to me. Here's my Pokemon I'm giving away. Here's the person I'm trading with. Here's the Pokemon I'm getting. Because now I am the trainer. And if I pretend to be this trainer, self makes a whole lot of sense because it's just me, the trainer, who's performing the trade. So the one I'm getting, their trainer better be me at the end of the day. The one I'm giving, the trainer's going to be the guy I'm trading with. See that? So by making good variable names and putting myself in the right mindset, I really minimize errors. Okay, so let's give this a shot real quick before we call it. All right, let's go to my world. All right, and let's run it. All right, so I don't think I would ever trade an Arcanine because, again, they're my favorite, but I guess we're going to have to. All right, so we'll make a trainer called Gary, right? Trainer.new. And we'll say he's like 36, and he's a expert as well. And he's going to have a Pokemon. Well, he's the dragon guy, right?
Good night.
Very cool. All right, so I want to set, first of all, I'll say I catch P1, and Gary is going to catch P2. And now we're, oh no, I just catch Pokemon. Whew, got me scared. All right, Gary caught P2. So now Micah.Pokemon, and I'll map it to type just so we can see it nice and easily. So Micah, I have Arcanine. And Gary is going to have his Dragonite. And I want to perform a trade. And I want to make sure it all works. As of right now, P1.trainer.name is Micah, and P2.trainer.name is Gary. All right, so everything's set up right, and I want to make sure this trade successfully trades the two. So I can choose whichever trainer object to perform the trade with. I'll initiate it with Micah, but it doesn't matter. So I'm going to say Micah. Let's go to here and see what the method's called. Trade Pokemon. So Micah, I don't know why I'm switching it back. I don't need to. Micah.trade Pokemon. And I want to say the Pokemon I want to give. So that's going to be P1, right? I could also say Micah.Pokemon.first, right? Just to be safe. But I'll say P1. It's okay. Doesn't matter. It's the same thing. The person I'm going to trade with, Gary, right? The variable that holds the trainer object, Gary. And then the Pokemon to get is P2, Gary's Dragonite. And if I didn't mess up, this should work. Let's check it out. Micah.Pokemon map, I now have Dragonite. Gary.Pokemon map, he has Arcanine. P1.trainer.name is now Gary. Arcanine now belongs to Gary. And P.trainer.name is now Micah. So we successfully performed a trade between the two, right? Because we made a method. We said, what do we want to do? We made a method name that made sense. We limited the scope to that method to do a single thing. We figured out what information we needed. We put ourselves in the shoes of the person performing this method, the individual trainer. We made our names so every piece of data made sense. We wrote pseudocode to make a game plan, and we executed that game plan. And this was a relatively, comparatively, this is a relatively complex method, right? Had a lot of moving pieces, but we got it to work on the first time because we had a really good process. So that's kind of what I want to impart to you guys. Don't be scared of object relationships. They're tough. Be ready to struggle with them because you will. I promise you that. Don't be scared of them though, right? Follow a good process. Mess around in binding.pry. If something goes wrong, figure out why it went wrong. Figure out what you missed when you made your game plan, right? And you'll get it working. I promise. Everybody struggles with this, guys. I remember my first cohort. I was like color coding everybody because I didn't have 76 people. I had like 20. So I was like color coding everybody and how they were doing and everything. And all my greens in the object relationship section went to like oranges or reds, which means that everybody struggled. So if you feel like you're struggling with object relationships, you're not alone, not only in this cohort, but across cohorts. Everybody struggles with object relationships. It's a tough topic. The only way to get through it is to really sit down and just think it through and practice until you're good at it, right? All right, so we're at 15 exactly, my cutoff point. Does anybody have any last minute questions for me before I move into the next pod?
I have a question.
What's up?
So we always have to have a third folder to unite two other folders?
Not necessarily. In a project, I would recommend it, right? So next week, I'll go through a nice file tree that you should be setting up your project like to show you how it works. In general, we would have like an environment folder, which unites all of our files together. And then we'd have one folder which runs everything that just requires the environment. And then we go from there. But don't worry about that now. I'll show you later. This was just a nice, simple way to connect the two and show you guys how it worked.
Okay.
Okay. Cool. Any other questions? All right, guys. If you're not in this pod, go ahead and head out. And if you are in the next pod, Take a 2-minute break or so, get some water, and I'll talk to you soon.